My name is Howard Stevenson. I was born and raised here in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and a proud graduate of Northside High School. And I went on to graduate from Indiana University undergrad and Indiana University Law School. However, the last 20 years I have lived in Indianapolis and the Fishers area, and I'm an owner of my own law firm, and I've been practicing law for 20 years, and I've owned my law firm for 10 years. And we've been so honored to do and work on many significant projects throughout the state. We're on the $900 million project for Lucas Oil Stadium and the expansion of the Indiana Convention Center. We've done work for the city of Indianapolis. We've done work for Evansville. We've done work for major Fortune 500 companies. But I would have loved to have had an opportunity to work in my own city of Fort Wayne. I've heard the candidates talk about the divided city that we have in Fort Wayne, that we have the haves and the have-nots. So my question after that long eloquy of a comment, I want to ask the candidates, what will you do if you become the mayor of Fort Wayne to narrow the achievement gap? I looked at the last census for Fort Wayne, and approximately we have 73% white residents, 15% African American, about 8% Hispanic, and 3% Asian. When we look at all of these projects that we have happening throughout our community, what would you do as our new mayor to ensure that we have diversity in terms of those receiving contracts through minority businesses, professional services? We have minority construction companies, we have engineers that are minorities, we have accountants, lawyers, that should be a part of these projects that we have with the city. Comparable sized cities in the state of Indiana and throughout the country have diversity goals and requirements where they may set aside 15% for minority companies or 5% for women-owned companies. It's great that we look for more retail companies on the south side of Fort Wayne, and I believe the mayor said because we have a lot of disposable income. But that's taken away if we participate and frequent those companies. But what can we do to have our minority companies to be a part of that economic drive that we have here in the city of Fort Wayne, so we can narrow that gap between the haves and the have-nots? Thank you.
Okay. Mayor, if we can start with you, then we'll...
Thank you, Eric, and thank you for calling me out, because I do have to leave shortly. I have to go to a memorial service, unfortunately. But I do want to thank you for allowing me to answer the question now. We do have a diversity council in Fort Wayne. In fact, we have two that work on just exactly what your question was. One is, how do we hire more minorities to work for the city of Fort Wayne? We're not where we should be, although, quite frankly, we are in a position that more and more minorities, and not just African Americans, but Hispanics and women, if you want to call them a minority. Quite frankly, there's more women now than men, but all of them are moving up in the administration. We now have our first African American police chief. That to me was a tremendous accomplishment. But the nice thing was, he wasn't hired because he was an African American. He was hired because he deserved the job. He did work his way up. And we have more opportunities like that for minorities in our administration. But we have to make sure that those opportunities are given to them. So we have a committee that looks at nothing but that. Make sure that we have 2,000 employees. We got to make sure that we're diverse as possible, not only in promotions, but also in hiring. And then we also have another committee as well that works on city contracts. How can we offer more city contracts to women-owned businesses, to minority-owned businesses? Now, many times, the city contracts are awful large. And a lot of the contracts are just starting off, and they're too small. So what we're asking them to do now is to partner with like organizations. Get two concrete developers or contractors together, because then they might be big enough. Or partner with a larger one and learn how the process works. We also have employer seminars and summits where we talk to them about doing business with the city, doing business with the state, and doing business with the federal government. We actually have attorneys there talking to them how they can go about getting prepared for those contracts. So we do have places, organizations with the city that are working on accomplishing just what you were asking, sir.
Eric.